Hey everybody, so today what we're going to talk about is pros and cons of Florida for 2024. We do one every year, but as time goes on, things are changing because Florida was booming, real estate was booming, everybody was moving here because of remote living and everything. So, but things change over time and things sometimes, change rapidly. So I found some really interesting articles and let's go over them. In the meantime, if you like this kind of content, do me a favor, consider subscribing. So one of the articles I found, it was pretty interesting, some fun facts about Florida. Florida basically has sunshine, that's why they call it the Sunshine State. So 237 days a year, it's sunny. And lately, during the spring and summer, at least in my area, Tampa, it used to rain every afternoon for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but I haven't seen that in like 2 or 3 years, so I'm not sure what's going on with that, but it's pretty much sunny every day lately. Yes, it's still hot and humid in the summer months and spring and even early fall. So basically Florida, another interesting fact about Florida is it's the only state that borders the Atlantic and the Gulf. So that's why we have some great beaches in Florida. So I found that interesting. More than 50 million people travel through just Orlando because we got Disney, we got a lot of things going on here, so it's a big vacation spot. But like any place, there's some pros and there's some cons, and that's what we're going to talk about today. They might be a little bit different for 23, and a lot of these things are my opinions, but let's check it out, and please do me a favor, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Okay, one of the biggest things with Florida that caused, and it's causing a lot of the problems, and it seems like it's getting worse, is everybody's moving here. It's the population. The population is blowing up in Florida. Take a look at this chart from Fred. Okay, by looking at this chart, you see basically 1940s, 1.9 million, and then 1960s, people started discovering it and they're saying, hey, we started having a lot of air conditioning around, and then it grew 1980, 10 million, and look at this, it's just a straight path going up. In 2023, we had almost 23 million people, and it's still growing. So with the influx of people, a lot changes, and it changes rapidly, from housing to environmental stuff to people living on the coast. And it's not like everybody's moving here and they're just moving to the middle of the state. Everybody's trying to be on the water or next to the water, and that's causing a lot of issues, and those are some of the things we're going to talk about in the pros and cons. So let's get started. A lot of people do pros and cons, so this is nothing new, and a lot of people say the same thing. What are some negative things about Florida? So we have to talk about some of the negative stuff that makes the list every year, like how hot it is, humidity, tourists, in some areas get packed that, especially during the winter, it is what it is. It's a tourist destination. People come here to get away from the cold, get away from the snow, and we're going to dive deeper into them, but it's the same complaint over again. It's hot, it's humid, it's crowded, because a lot of people want to be here, and it's a nice place to come visit, especially since you have Disney, and you have the beaches, and you have fishing, and you have golf, and you have pretty much anything you want to do. It's a playground for adults. All right, let's start off with a positive note, okay? A pro about Florida. Florida has a rich history, okay? And there's a lot to do here when it comes to culture, food, and everything. It's a great place. You go bring the kids to Disney, Universal Studios. In Tampa, you go to Busch Gardens. There's plenty of things. So during the weekend, when the weekend comes up and you want to find something to do, from Tampa to Disney, it's like an hour-and-a-half drive depending on the traffic, which makes it convenient. Sometimes people want to go to more of a relax, laid back, and look for the food and the culture and history. So like a place like St. Augustine. So that is a big pro when it comes to Florida. You know, you have lots of culture and things to do. But cons at the same time. Like I went to St. Augustine not that long ago, and I made the mistake by going during the weekend. And it wasn't a holiday weekend, it was just a regular weekend. And I did a video on that, check it out. It was packed. I had a hard time finding parking. I had to wait to get into the restaurants. It's just the pricing for the Airbnb or the hotels was expensive on the weekends. But if you're retired and you could make it just, you know, on during the weekday, it's much easier. It seems like the weekends to go do things, you know, in Florida, that's what everybody could do, is go on the weekend. So if you're in Disney, you might be waiting an hour and a half to get on the most popular ride, you know, and then you end up doing only 2 or 3 rides the whole day that last 2 minutes each. So that's a big con, because everybody is trying to enjoy themselves in Florida just like you. All right, here's a big pro for people like professional sports teams. We have plenty of sports here. You know, we have NASCAR, we have the Tampa Bay Rays, we have the Bucks, we have sports in Miami. We have lots of sports in Florida, and it's an incredible place. People come here for, you know, the Yankees come just here in Tampa, and the Phillies, they come here for spring practice. So it's a great place to come if you're really into professional sports, because your team, like I am, like Montreal Canadiens, okay, because I was born in Canada, like I told you guys before, but to get a ticket for a Canadian game up in Montreal is almost impossible. But when they come to play here, you get a ticket and you go watch them. You watch your Montreal team play. The only funny thing about it is, I went to a Montreal Tampa game, and everybody was wearing Canadian jerseys and they were voting. I thought I was in Montreal for a little while, so it's really, really funny. But another thing that doesn't have to do with sports. Concerts, you know, a lot of concerts come here, especially if you're into country music. My wife is into country music. There seems like there's a country concert every other weekend, and popular bands too. So if you're into going to concerts, including sports, this is a place. It's a big pro about living in Florida, because you're like, hey, where do you want to go? Let's go to a sports game, and it's not that hard, and so you don't have to travel that far either. Okay, talking about going to concerts, going to sports, okay, public transportation in Florida, in my opinion, is horrible. It really is. Basically, let me tell you, you know, I went to Maine recently, and we wanted to leave out of the airport, Clearwater Airport, St. Pete Airport, not Tampa, the hub, and they have limited parking there. So I'm like, all right, what do we do? You know, there's no buses, there's no really any public transportation, trains, all that stuff. So thank God, you know, we had Uber, you know, and I never used Uber before, but I used it. It was pretty good. They came, they picked me up, they took me, I left my vehicles here because there's limited parking in that airport. And they say a lot of times when you go to that airport, you can't find parking, and you're trying to catch a plane and you can't find parking. So you need to take public transportation. And my biggest recommendation, if you're moving to Florida and you need public transportation, get used to Uber and Lyft and places like that, and a taxi company. But I find that a big con. Here's one of the biggest cons about Florida if you're moving to Florida. Okay, and I talked about it in the 22 when we did a pros and cons. I talked about it in 23. And I was hoping not to talk about it for 24, but it just seems like it's getting worse. Okay? Homeowners insurance and car insurance. Okay? So, people, basically, article after article, people are feeling the pinch of high home insurance rates, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. This is from October 2023. Okay? So in October 2023, they were talking about it. Like this particular person, I won't read the whole thing, but it says the windstorm portion of insurance went from 10,000 a year, which was cheap, they said, and then doubled to 20,000. He called his insurance agent and got some surprising advice. She said, honestly, my recommendation will be to pay off your mortgage and self-insure. This is for Miami. Okay? Here's another one. Why Florida car insurance is so expensive. Now we were just talking about homeowners insurance. Okay? People in Florida drive more because no public transportation. Auto repairs are getting more expensive. People in Florida drive uninsured. Even though it's required to have insurance in Florida, a lot of people are driving without it because they just can't afford it. And then if you get into an accident with a person that doesn't have insurance, good luck collecting. I know a lot of people that got into accidents with people that didn't have insurance, and unless you have uninsured motorist, you could be in trouble. So definitely, if you're moving to Florida, talk to your broker about talk to them about your insurance agent about homeowners insurance and car insurance, because it's a big issue. Now, I just showed you an article from 2023. I could show you 100 articles from 2024 saying the same exact thing. But I just wanted to show you that in 2023, they were still talking about it, and they're still talking about it till this day. Big con. Here's a pro that I like about Florida. Okay, if you're a resident of Florida, you get discounts. You get discounts basically on Disney gives discounts for Florida residents. Busch Gardens gives discounts. Universal gives discounts on Florida residents because during their off time they need people to go into the park, so they have to cater to Floridians. You know, some fishing charter companies give discounts for locals. So that's a big pro. Here is a big con about Florida, okay? And I don't know if it's going to change, but as of right now of this recording, it hasn't. In 2023, we talked about home prices because supply and demand, everybody's moving here. 2024, we're still talking about it, okay? Prices are starting to drop, okay? Talk to your local realtor. I'm not a realtor. But prices are starting to drop because people, in my opinion, they're just asking too much for the house. Okay? But the average home price is more than the national average. It says compared to the national average of almost $349,800, Florida's average home price is a bit more expensive at almost $392,300. And are prices dropping? Yes, they're dropping, but what's happening is a lot of people, bought at the peak of the market, and they want to either break even. They don't want to go to the closing, losing money and everything, because some of them were remote workers and now they were called back to work. Some people, we have a lot of boomerang buyers here. They come here in Florida and they think it's great and they think it's going to be one continuous vacation, and they realize that it's not true. It's just another place to live. So they're trying to sell right now, and they're like, okay, I want to get at least the money I paid for it, but that's not going to happen now. So over time, I believe the homes will appreciate, but not if you bought during the peak. So if you bought during the peak the last few years, you're going to have a hard time. But homes are still expensive. And people are going to say, hey, you know what, and this price cuts. Yes, because people are trying to get a lot of money for their house. They put up their house for sale at a crazy price, some of them, and then they cut the price. And a lot of realtors, they want to get the listing, so they're like, hey, what do you want to list it for? We're at 400,000. Oh, I want to list it for 500. Sure. They get the listing, and then 2-3 weeks later, you'll see a price cut 20,000, then 40,000, until it goes back to what the market prices for that home. So big con is the price of houses. Is that going to change? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? So we talked about housing, okay, but the overall cost just to live in Florida, this is a con. The housing market is expensive, like we talked about, but when the overall cost of living is slightly higher than the national average. The national cost of living index is 100, while Florida index is 103.1. And I also read articles that inflation was much hotter in Florida than the rest of the country. Check that fact, because I read some articles. I didn't check them, but it was in more than one article. Every year, you know, on the con list, no matter who does the pros and cons for Florida, they say natural wildlife can get scary. Okay, even this article says it gets scary. Yes, there is alligators, there's bobcats, there's spiders, there's snakes, because this is their habitat, you know. But I've been living here for a long time now, and I talk to a lot of people that grew up here, and they're not a problem, you know. They're a problem when people start feeding the alligators, and the alligators are getting used to the people feeding them, so it approaches them. And then somebody calls Fish and Game, and they come in, take the alligator, and they destroy it. Not the fault of the alligator. You know, snakes, you know, don't walk in high brush, you know. When you're living here, you'll know what to do and what not to do. Like when I lived out in Wyoming, I knew if I was walking in the woods, you know, when there's grizzly activity and stuff, because they just woke up and they're hungry and they're foraging, I know to be careful and where I go, and carry bear spray or make a lot of noise and don't, you know, spook them. So it all depends on where you're living. So even though a lot of people say wildlife can be scary, I don't think so. You'll get used to it really, really quick. And there's not as much as people make it. Some people make it sound like it's like a jungle here. It's not. So here's a pro, and I'll briefly talk about this one. Gardening. If you're really into gardening, you could garden all year round here. You don't have to worry about snow. We do have some frost. You know, the weather in northern Florida is different than the weather in southern Florida. It's a big state. So depending on where you are in Florida, but pretty much you could garden all year round. We do have frost. Even here in Tampa, we'll have frost 1 or 2 times a year. So keep that in mind. But if you're into gardening, great place to be, you know. The big con in Florida that everybody was talking about is hurricanes, weather. Yes, it could be extreme. The hurricanes could hit anywhere in Florida. There's no safe place in Florida. It's Mother Nature, and it is what it is. But if you're prepared, and the way they're building houses now with impact windows, you know, and you know, you keep supply of batteries and water and food during hurricane season, you'll be fine. Since I lived here, I've probably been through 7 or 8 hurricanes. The first 2 or 3, you know, were kind of scary because I didn't know what to expect, but now I'm getting used to them. But all hurricanes are not created equal. So the hurricanes I'm talking about is like a category 1, 2 that skirts us. But like last year or 2 years ago, when the Southwest Florida got hit, it was devastating. Okay, so do not take hurricanes lightly. I did a whole video on how to prepare for hurricanes. I recommend you guys watching it. But yes, it's a big con. I know a lot of people that moved here and they loved it. Everything was fine. They could deal with everything. But once they ran into a hurricane, they were like, we're out of here. I know somebody that, you know, on the water where I'm building, they moved there. They spent their life savings in the house. We went through a hurricane. We got a little bit of flooding. But it was enough to say it was too scary for them, and they want to sell and they want to get out. So really, really consider, you know, if you're okay with storms, because it's not when you're going to get hit. I mean, it is when you're going to get hit. It's not if you're going to get hit. It's when you're going to get hit. Because hurricanes are here to stay, and they seem like they're intensifying lately, and they said that this hurricane season is supposed to be more active. I'm not a meteorologist, but that's what they're saying. So if you don't like storms, this is not the place for you. Here's another con. Okay, and I know I'm talking about more of cons than pros, but there's a lot of pros, but I think people need to hear all the cons. So basically, if you like change of seasons, you know, maybe move to northern Florida. You know, there might be a little bit of a change, but if you're down in Orlando, down to Miami, if you're looking for four seasons, fall, spring, summer, you know, and winter, it's really not going to happen. Over here, I consider it a pro and not a con, but over here in the winter, it can get a little chilly. You put on a little sweater or sweatshirt, and I'm good to go. I pretty much wear shorts all year round over here. There's a few weeks that it does get chilly, and once your body gets used to it, like to me, 50, 60 degrees is freezing here now since I moved here. But then I see people from the Northeast, you know, from the northern states, come here during that time, during the winter, and I see them in t-shirts and shorts and swimming. I just can't comprehend it because I'm freezing. I don't know if it's true that your blood thins out, but who knows. So, change of season. If you're into change of season, Florida's not for you, but for me, I'd rather be warm than cold. Beaches, big pro. If you love the beaches, hands down, Florida's the place to be. You go on, if you want rougher water, go on to the Atlantic side. You know, the water's beautiful. If you want calmer waters, go on the Gulf side. You know, I fish a lot. I like fishing the Gulf. And the Gulf, you know, it's really, really cool. Pretty much for every mile I go out, it gets like a foot deep. I could be out, you know, 20 miles and it might be 20, 25 feet in some areas. So I enjoy it. The water's calmer in the Gulf. It's beautiful. It's clean. And the beaches, you know, you have sandbars. You can park your boat on the sandbar, and it's just tropical in some areas. But you know, the con of it too is those sandbars on the weekends. It can be a zoo also. You know, boat after boat after boat. So it's not going to be a secluded place that you're going to go there and be like, oh, I'm the only boat on this sandbar. It's not going to be like that, especially on the weekend. As soon as the sandbar appears, you'll have 20 boats on it. I don't know how it happens, but it does. So if you enjoy the water and the beaches, go during the weekday. At the end of the day, if you want to live in Florida, my strongest recommendation is, so you don't become a boomerang buyer or what we call a halfback, with people that move from the Northeast to Florida and then they decide Florida's not for them, so they move halfway back to like North Carolina or South Carolina. My biggest advice to you is to rent. And I'm not talking about rent for a week or two or a month. Rent for a year. Go through the whole year. Go through a hurricane season. Go through a hot summer. Go through a winter. Go through a tourist time. You know, really experience Florida. Because if you can survive after a year in Florida and you say, hey, this place is great, then it's good for you. But if it's not, you just don't renew your lease and then you move wherever you want. That's my biggest advice. I think people that just move here without experience in Florida, and I'm not talking about experience in Florida like they say, okay, I came down here and I vacationed for a week or two. That's not experiencing Florida. I'm talking about come here, set up, retire, or work, or whatever you're going to be doing, and do it for a year. That's today's video. Do me a favor, consider subscribing. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Thank you.